What if everything you thought you knew about learning, about schools, even about society itself, was built on a foundation that John Dewey called, well, artificial and disconnected?
Hmm.
And what if being truly well-informed isn't really about memorizing facts, but something more like a living, transforming process?
It's a really profound thought, isn't it? The idea that our usual way of thinking about knowledge might actually be limiting our own growth.
It absolutely is. And that's exactly the territory we're exploring today. We're diving deep into a truly groundbreaking work, John Dewey's Democracy in Education, originally published way back in 1915, then reprinted in India in 2004.
Yeah, this isn't just some old book. It's a foundational text. It fundamentally reshaped how people thought about, well, the whole purpose of learning, especially in a democracy.
So our mission today is to really unpack Dewey's core arguments. This idea that education isn't just prepping you for life later on.
Right, but that it is life. Or rather, as he put it, its own end, this continuous process of growth, of social transformation. We want to pull out those really compelling bits that challenge how we normally think.
And honestly, whether you're a student sort of navigating the system or a parent trying to guide a kid, maybe a professional who's constantly adapting.
Or even just someone who likes thinking deeply about how we learn and, thrive.
Exactly. Dewey offers this really radical, almost liberating perspective. So get ready to have your understanding of learning, maybe even your own day-to-day experiences, really enriched.
Definitely.
Okay, let's start with something really fundamental from Dewey. He points out this key distinction between living things and inanimate things. Living things, he says, maintain themselves by renewal.
It's such a simple observation, but think about it. A stone, if you hit it, it just resists or shatters, right?
Right.
It doesn't actively try to use that energy for its own existence. But a living thing, even facing a stronger force, it tries to turn those energies acting on it into means for its own further existence. It adapts.
It has to keep renewing itself, or it stops being that living rook. It loses its identity.
Exactly. It's this constant interaction and adaptation.
That's powerful. And here's where it gets really interesting. He extends this idea correctly to social life. Dewey argues that social life is essentially identical with communication.
Yeah, and the kicker is, he says, all communication, and hence all genuine social life, is educative.
So every time we communicate, we're learning.
Both sides. Both sides. When you receive a communication, yeah, your experience is enlarged. You share in what someone else felt or thought. Your attitude might shift a bit. But, and this is crucial, the person doing the communicating is also changed.
How so?
Well, think about trying to explain something really complicated, something you experienced deeply. To communicate it fully, accurately, you have to formulate it. You have to put it into words.
Which forces you to see it differently.
Precisely. You have to kind of see it as another person might see it. Dewey even compares it to art. He says all communication is like art. It's this creative, transformative process.
Wow. So it's not just transmitting information, it's co-creating understanding.
And reshaping yourself in the process. That's what makes social life vital and inherently educative.
Okay. So if real social life is this ongoing educative communication, what did education look like before we had, formal schools?
Well, Dewey says initially it was mostly incidental. You learned by living with others, participating, absorbing things naturally.
Just part of daily life.
Pretty much. But then, as civilization gets more complex, he says the gap between the capacities of the young and the concerns of adults widens.
Meaning it gets harder for kids to just pick things up by watching.
Exactly. Especially for complex skills or knowledge. Playful imitation isn't enough anymore for, say, advanced trades or abstract ideas. And this widening gap, that's what leads to us inventing intentional agencies, schools, and specific materials, studies.
But he saw a danger there, didn't he, with formal schooling?
A critical danger. He warned about creating an undesirable split between the experience gained in more direct associations and what is acquired in school. That potential disconnect between life and learning worried him a lot.
That disconnect feels very relevant today, actually. Which brings us to his ideas about the environment. He argues it's the environment that guides us, not direct force or coercion.
Yeah, he says required beliefs cannot be hammered in, and attitudes, you cannot plaster them on. It just doesn't work like that.
So if you can't force these things, how do they form, according to Dewey?
They're formed, he says, by means of the action of the environment in calling out certain responses. The environment prompts us, shapes us through interaction.
And when he says environment, he doesn't just mean like the room you're in.
No, it's much more active than that. It's the specific continuity of the surroundings with his own active tendencies. Your real environment is what you're actively engaged with, what you interact with, and vary with.
Like his example of the astronomer. Their environment includes the stars, the telescope, not just the observatory walls.
Exactly. It's about what truly occupies your attention and activity. And this includes the social environment, too, which is maybe even more powerful.
Our activities, what we can do, depends so much on the expectations, demands, approvals, and condemnations of others.
Massively. Think about a business person planning something alone in their office. They seem independent, right? But they're constantly being socially guided.
By the market, competitors, customers, what they expect others will do or think.
Exactly. Even solitary thinking, if it relates to associating with others, is fundamentally social behavior.
Okay, so if the environment, especially the social one, is so key, how do schools fit in as these deliberately designed environments?
Well, their primary function, Dewey says, is to provide a simplified environment.
Simplified, how?
It selects the really fundamental features of the world, the important stuff, and presents it in a progressive order. It shields you from getting totally overwhelmed by everything hitting you at once: business, politics, art, science.
The clamor for attention, as he called it, so it manages complexity.
Right. And in diverse societies like the U.S. back then, with different groups with different traditional customs, schools offer a homogeneous and balanced environment.
He saw the American public school as having this strong assimilative force, creating a kind of unity of outlook. That's a significant claim.
It is. And another key job for the school is to coordinate all the different influences you encounter: family, street, work, whatever.
To prevent you from being split, having different standards for different situations.
Exactly. To help create a more integrated person, preventing that internal fragmentation. It provides a kind of steadying influence.
He also takes aim at the common idea of imitation, doesn't he? That we just instinctively copy people.
Yeah, he thinks calling it an instinctive tendency to imitate is misleading.
So what is it then, if not imitation?
He says it's more like partaking with others in a use of things which leads to consequences of common interest. It's about joining in shared activities.
So the pattern isn't just the other person's action.
No, the pattern is the whole situation, the shared goal. Everyone needs to adapt his action in view of what the other person has done and is to do. The pressure to conform for like-mindedness comes from needing to fit into that group action to get something done together.
It's about coordinated effort, not just blind copying.
Exactly, much more active and purposeful.
Okay, this really reframes how we learn and grow. If we're constantly adapting and interacting, what does that mean for the purpose of education itself? Dewey makes this incredibly powerful statement here.
The one about the end?
Yeah. The educational process has no end beyond itself. It is its own end. It's just this process of continual reorganizing, reconstructing, transforming.
That just completely shifts how we look at childhood, doesn't it? It's not about focusing on what the child lacks compared to an adult.
Or treating immaturity as just a deficit, measured against some fixed standard of adulthood.
Right. He says the normal child and normal adult alike are both engaged in growing. And get this, adults should actually strive for more childlikeness in certain ways. Like sympathetic curiosity, unbiased responsiveness, and openness of mind. Growth isn't just for kids. It's a lifelong process. And adults need that open, curious spirit, too.
So it's less about reaching a finish line and more about the journey of continuous expansion.
Yeah.
For everyone.
Precisely. And that's why he's so critical of seeing education as just preparation or getting ready for adult life.
Because kids live in the present, right?
Proverbially live in the present, he says. Making the future the main reason for effort now actually involves loss of impetus. It weakens motivation.
And leads to relying on external rewards and punishments, like bribes and threats.
Exactly, those adventitious motives of pleasure and pain. Instead, education should focus on progressively realizing present possibilities. If you do that, he believes, the future which grows out of the present is surely taken care of. Focus on meaningful engagement now.
He really wasn't afraid to challenge the big educational series of his time either,
Right.
like John Locke's idea of mental faculties.
Oh yeah, the mind as muscle idea. That you had separate faculties for attention, memory, reason, and you just trained them with drills, like exercising a muscle.
Like a mental gymnast.
Right. Dewey said, no, these aren't fixed faculties. They're more like tendencies to respond in certain ways to changes in the environment. They emerge from interaction, from trying to control and adapt, Much more dynamic.
And he also took on Herbart, who saw the mind as being formed by presentations of information.
Herbart was influential, bringing conscious method to teaching, but Dewey felt his approach was deeply flawed
Why? What was the flaw?
because it basically ignored the active role of the learner. Dewey said it represents the schoolmaster come to his own. It's all about the teacher presenting stuff. And it was essentially retrospective.
Focused on the past.
Yeah, patterning the student's mind on the spiritual heritage of the past. Dewey wanted a perspective view using the past as a resource, yes, but for building a developing future. Use what we know to create, not just to replicate.
Okay, so if education is this dynamic growth, this active engagement, what kind of society best supports it? This brings us to his view of democracy.
And he elevates democracy way beyond just, voting or government structure. He calls it primarily a mode of associated living, of conjoint communicated experience.
A way of life, basically.
A way of life built on shared experience and communication. He argues it breaks down barriers of class, race, and national territory. This leads to greater diversity of stimuli and a liberation of powers because more perspectives are interacting.
And he gives us a way to measure the value of any social groups.
He does. You ask two things. One, how numerous and varied are the interests which are consciously shared within the group?
And two,
How full and free is the interplay with other forms of association? Is the group open and connected to others?
so his example of a criminal gang.
Very limited shared interests, mostly negative ones, and deliberately isolated from wider society, low value on his scale.
Versus a healthy family.
Many shared interests, material, intellectual, aesthetic. Members benefit from each other's growth, and the family interacts freely with other groups like schools, businesses, communities. Much higher value, more connections, more shared interests, more life.
And he warns against the opposite isolation. When a group has interests of its own that shut it out from full interaction with other groups.
Whether it's nations, families, even schools cut off from the community. That makes for rigidity and formal institutionalizing of life for static and selfish ideals. It stifles growth.
An alert and expanding mental life depends upon an enlarging range of contact, he says, not just with the physical world, but crucially, the sphere of social contacts.
And this applies directly to work, too. He saw a big problem with work being reduced to just mechanical routine.
Where workers don't understand the bigger picture, have no personal interest in what they're doing.
Exactly. He argued that true scientific management shouldn't just be about efficiency. It should aim to enlist his intelligent interest in what he's doing. Recognize the human need for meaning in work.
Because that lack of broad social interest, even if someone is technically skilled, leads to, what do you call it, an absence of mind.
An absence of mind and a distortion of emotional life. It highlights the human cost when work lacks connection and purpose.
He even points to a historical example, the Prussian state in the early 19th century.
Yes, as an example of an education system designed purely for social efficiency, serving the state. The focus was on disciplinary training rather than personal development.
Subordinating the individual to national interests.
Right. And we're just mentioning this as it appears in Dewey's text, showing how he saw educational philosophies deeply tied to the surrounding society's goals without taking a side on the politics itself. It just illustrates his point about education reflecting social values.
Which leads perfectly into how we should think about aims in education. If education is growth, how do we set goals?
Dewey insists a real aim has to grow out of the current situation. It must be an outgrowth of existing conditions, and it has to be flexible.
Not rigid.
No, capable of alteration to meet circumstances. He sees aims as experimental, constantly growing and being refined as they're tested in action.
So he's wary of grand, ultimate, fixed goals.
Very wary. Those ends that are alleged to be general and ultimate, he finds them abstract and remote. They actually limit intelligence because they're imposed from outside. The learner is just left figuring out the means to someone else's end. A true aim is more like a method for intelligently dealing with the situation.
Okay, and this next point feels absolutely central. Interest and discipline are connected, not opposed. That turns conventional thinking upside down.
Completely. We usually think of discipline as forcing yourself to do something you're not interested in.
Right.
But Dewey says interest measures, or rather is the depth of the grip which the foreseen end has upon one in moving one to act for its realization. Interest is the engine of focused effort.
So if you're not interested,
Then any deliberation will be perfunctory and superficial. Half-hearted, shallow. You won't really engage your full intelligence. Discipline comes from interest, from being gripped by a purpose.
and this connects to his idea of the self, doesn't it? The self isn't fixed.
No, the self is not something ready-made, but something in continuous formation through choice of action. Your choices shape who you become.
So having an interest in something isn't selfish.
Not in a negative way. It means his self is found in that work. Your identity is engaged. He actually says self and interest are two names for the same fact.
Wow. The kind and amount of interest actively taken in a thing reveals and measures the quality of selfhood which exists.
Exactly. Your self grows and shows itself through what genuinely engages you.
So how does this dynamic view connect to moral education? Is morality separate?
Not at all. For Dewey, moral education is inseparable from securing knowledge, the knowledge connected with the system of impulses and habits. It's about understanding the connections and consequences of actions.
The use of knowledge depends on its connections, like his dynamite example.
Right. A safecracker and a chemist both know about dynamite, but their knowledge is totally different, for it is knit into connection with different aims and habits. One uses it destructively, the other constructively, hopefully.
So when school subjects are learned with their social significance realized,
They feed moral interest and develop moral insight. Learning isn't just cognitive, it shapes character. Qualities like open-mindedness, single-mindedness, sincerity, breadth of outlook, thoroughness, assumption of responsibility for developing the consequences of ideas.
these aren't just intellectual virtues.
They are intrinsically moral qualities for Dewey. How you think, how you approach problems, how you connect knowledge to action, that is moral development.
This really leads to a unified vision, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Experience, thinking, subject matter, they all seem to flow together for Dewey. Let's start with experience.
He describes experience as having both an active and a passive element peculiarly combined. There's the trying, the action, the experiment.
And the undergoing, experiencing the consequences.
Exactly. His famous example, a child sticking their finger in a flame. It's just movement and pain until the two are connected. That connection, linking the action, trying, with the consequence undergoing, that is experience. That's where meaning comes from.
It's not just the event, it's the perceived link between action and outcome.
Yes. And that leads directly to thinking. Thinking is the accurate and deliberate instituting of connections between what is done and its consequences.
It's making those links conscious, explicit.
Right. And this is why he says all thinking is research, and all research is native, original, with him who carries it on. Even a child figuring something out is doing original research for them.
But in schools, often the problems aren't really the students' own problems, are they?
That's his critique. Often the problems are his only as a pupil, not as a human being. The real task becomes figuring out what the teacher wants.
Which leads to lamentable waste and thinking that's artificially one-sided. It stifles genuine inquiry.
Definitely. And this leads to another provocative statement. Thinking is method, the method of intelligent experience.
Meaning thinking isn't some separate skill you apply to a subject.
No, it's inherent in the way you intelligently engage with the subject matter, like his analogy of the pianist. Their technique isn't something separate from playing. It's the orderly way of using the keys to get the desired musical result.
The method is part of the doing.
It's the intelligence in the doing.
Okay, so if thinking is the method of intelligent experience, what exactly is the subject matter in this view?
Subject matter is basically all the stuff you deal with. Facts observed, recalled, read, and talked about, and the ideas suggested while you're working towards a purpose, developing a situation.
And it have to connect to the learner's current state.
Always connect to their present needs and capacities. He even points out etymology, how words like can, knowledge, and can, ability, were originally related. Knowing and doing are intrinsically linked.
How do things like play and work fit into the curriculum then?
Both are seen as purposeful activities involving ends consciously entertained. They're not just messing around. And crucially, he points out that the sciences themselves often grew gradually out from useful social occupations.
Like physics from tools, chemistry from dyeing, math from surveying.
Exactly. These real-world social ends provide incredibly rich contexts for learning science and social studies. The school's job is to make sure play and work are used to facilitate desirable mental and moral growth, not just become mechanical chores.
He also has specific ideas about geography and history, doesn't he? They're not just facts to memorize.
Not at all. Their purpose is enriching and liberating the more direct and personal context of life by furnishing their context. They give meaning to the present.
So geography gives you the power to see the spatial, the natural connections.
And history gives you the power to see the human connections. How did things get to be this way? History, for Dewey, is fundamentally the history of the present, understanding today by tracing the process of its making.
And he emphasized industrial and intellectual history, stuff often left out.
Yes, because that reveals how humanity really advanced through intellectual discoveries and inventions, not just the actions of kings and generals. It shows the power of ideas and tools in shaping our world.
And finally, science.
Yeah.
He saw it as crucial for progress.
As the fruition of the cognitive factors in experience. Science allows us to make progress consciously, deliberately, rather than just by accident.
But he criticized how it was often taught.
Yeah, taught as just so much bare information and a technical vocabulary, totally disconnected from experience. He wanted students to get an insight into what scientific method means by actually engaging with crude material and subjecting it to purposeful handling, by doing, experimenting, figuring things out. And he defended abstraction, too.
Which people often see as detached from real life.
But Dewey called abstraction the very artery of intelligence. It's what lets us take meaning from one experience and apply it to new ones. Like learning to navigate a city, you develop an abstract map in your head.
It's a tool for intelligent transfer and transformation.
Exactly. It makes our intelligence flexible and powerful.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, Dewey brings it all together with a really bold claim about philosophy itself.
Yeah, he suggests that philosophy in its widest sense can actually be defined as the general theory of education.
Whoa, so the point of philosophy is education.
Or at least its purpose is to synthesize everything, the very details of the world and of life, into a single inclusive whole in a way that guides the conduct of life. And education is central to that conduct.
And he has a test for any philosophical theory, right?
A critical test. If a theory makes no difference in educational endeavor, it must be artificial. It has to connect to practice.
Philosophy should help us understand educational problems where they actually arise and thrive, ensuring that schooling isn't just routine, but is informed by a broad and sympathetic survey of its place in contemporary life.
Exactly. It keeps education grounded in real life and guided by thoughtful principles. It connects the what and how with the why.
What an incredible journey through Dewey's thought. We've really dug into his ideas from democracy and education, how life is growth, communication is social bedrock, and education is this ongoing, purposeful transformation, not just preparation.
Yeah, his vision weaves together mind and body, theory and practice, individual growth, and the health of society in a really compelling way.
And it leaves us and you listening with that Deweyan challenge, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Are our learning experiences, our own, our kids, and our workplaces truly integrated with the world, or are they kind of artificial, disconnected?
Are we fostering real inquiry, real intelligent thinking, or just collecting dead information? Are we embracing that continuous growth in ourselves and others, or are we stuck on fixed external standards without maybe even realizing it?
So the final thought to ponder. If Dewey is right, if the educational process has no end beyond itself, it is its own end, what happens when we really recognize that principle in our daily lives, in our work, our relationships, our own learning? How does that shift our sense of purpose and maybe even our ability to help shape a truly democratic, evolving future?
What immediate present possibilities are you inspired to engage with right now, knowing that's where real growth happens?